In a quiet village surrounded by dusty roads and silent trees, there stood a small house made of old bricks and fading memories. It was not a rich house, nor a beautiful one, but inside it lived a love so deep that it could never be measured in money. That house belonged to Mariam, a widow, and her only son, Daniel. Mariam had lost her husband when Daniel was just 5 years old. From that day onward, life became a long road of hardship. She washed clothes in other people's homes, stitched torn garments late into the night, and skipped meals so her son could eat. Her hands grew rough, her back bent early, but her heart never complained. Daniel was her world. Every morning, she woke him gently, kissed his forehead, and packed his school bag with care. Sometimes there was only dry bread inside, but she always added a smile, so he would not feel poor. When Daniel returned from school, she listened to every word he said, as if his small stories were treasures. At night, when Daniel slept, Mariam would sit by the window, whispering prayers. God, she would say softly, give my son a better life than mine. She did not ask for riches, she only asked that Daniel never suffer the way she did. As Daniel grew older, the village began to feel small to him. He watched videos on borrowed phones, heard stories of people who went abroad and returned rich. Tall buildings, clean streets, bright lights, all of it filled his mind with dreams. One evening, as Mariam prepared dinner, Daniel spoke carefully. Ammi, he said, I want to go abroad. The spoon froze in Mariam's hand. Abroad? She asked, forcing a smile. So far, yes, Daniel replied. There are no jobs here. If I go, I can earn well. I can change our life. Mariam felt fear rise in her chest, but she pushed it down. A mother's heart often breaks silently so her child's dreams can live. When will you come back? She asked softly. Daniel smiled. Soon, I promise. That word promise stayed in Mariam's heart like a fragile glass to send Daniel abroad. Mariam sold her jewelry, the last memory of her marriage. She borrowed money from neighbors, signed papers she could barely read, and prayed every night with tears in her eyes. On the day Daniel left, Mariam walked with him to the bus stop. She held his hands tightly, as if letting go might stop her heart. Call me, she said again and again. I will, Daniel replied. Every week, she watched the bus disappear, not knowing she had just seen her son for the last time. The house became very quiet after Daniel left. Mariam placed his shoes near the door, just as he had left them. His room remained untouched. Every morning, she cleaned the house, cooked food for two, then remembered there was only one dot at first. Daniel called often. His voice sounded excited, full of hope. Ammi, the city is big. Ammi, I got a small job. Ammi, don't worry, I'm fine. Each call gave Mariam strength. She would sit straight, smile proudly, and tell neighbors, my son will return successful. But slowly, the calls became fewer once a month, then once every few months. When Mariam called, sometimes the phone rang unanswered, sometimes it was switched off. He must be busy, she told herself. He is working hard. Every evening, she sat near the door, listening for footsteps that never came. Mariam began writing messages Daniel never replied to. How are you, my son? Did you eat today? I am fine. Don't worry. She never told him the truth that her knees hurt, that her eyesight was fading, that loneliness was eating her from inside. A mother does not burden her child. On festivals, Mariam cooked Daniel's favorite food and placed it on the table. She waited until the food grew cold, then wrapped it and fed it to the stray cats outside. At night, she slept with Daniel's childhood photo under her pillow. Sometimes she dreamed of him knocking on the door, smiling, saying, Ammi, I'm home. She would wake up crying. Years passed. Children in the village grew up, married, and moved away. Old neighbors died. New faces came. Life moved forward except Mariam's. Every morning, she sat on the same wooden chair near the door. Every evening, she looked down the same dusty road. People began to whisper. Her son forgot her. He became rich and ashamed. He will never return. But Mariam defended him, even against the truth. No, she said, my son is good. Something must be stopping him. She waited. Mariam's health slowly failed. Her hands trembled. Her steps grew slow. Still, she refused to rest. What if he comes today? She said. I must be awake. One night, she collapsed alone in the kitchen. The neighbors helped her, begged her to stay with relatives. I can't leave this house, she whispered. My son will come here. She stopped going outside. The world shrank to the door, the chair, and the road. Her prayers became fewer words and more tears. God, she whispered. Just let me see him once. One cold evening, Miriam sat wrapped in a thin shawl. The wind howled outside. Her eyes were fixed on the door. She spoke softly, as if Daniel could hear her. I made your favorite bread today. No answer. I kept your room clean. Silence. I am not angry, she said. I just want to see your face. Her head leaned against the door. Her breathing slowed. That night, Miriam passed away quietly, sitting where she had waited for years. The door remained closed. Days later, a neighbor finally reached Daniel. Your mother is gone, he said. Daniel froze. He booked a flight immediately. When he returned to the village, the house was locked. Dust covered the door. Inside, everything was the same. His shoes, his room, the chair near the door. On the table lay a folded piece of paper. It was Miriam's handwriting. My son, if you are reading this, it means I am gone. Do not cry. I waited because loving you was my purpose. May God forgive you and bless you. Your Amy. Daniel fell to the floor, holding the paper, realizing that success had cost him the one love that never asked for anything. Daniel stayed in the village for weeks, sitting on the same chair where his mother had waited, but the door never opened. The road stayed silent. Some losses can never be repaired. A mother waited with love. A son returned with regret, and between them stood time, cruel and unforgiving. Daniel stayed in the village longer than he had planned. Every morning, he woke up hoping just for a second that everything had been a bad dream, but the silence of the house reminded him of the truth. He touched the walls slowly, as if they could speak. This is where you leaned while waiting. He whispered. The kitchen still carried a faint smell of old spices. The small shelf still held the cracked cup she used every day. Daniel realized something painful. His mother had not changed anything in the house after he left. She had lived as if he might return at any moment. Even his room was untouched. The bed was neatly made. His childhood books were stacked carefully. On the wall hung a calendar from years ago. The date of his departure was circled in red. Daniel sat on the floor and cried. Silently. Neighbors came to visit him. She waited every day. One old woman said gently. She never complained, said another. She defended you until the end. Someone whispered. Each sentence cut deeper than any punishment. Daniel remembered the times he ignored. Her calls because he was busy. The messages he read but never replied to. The thought that he would call tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. That night, Daniel sat on the same wooden chair near the door. The same place where his mother had spent years waiting. Now he was the one waiting. Waiting for forgiveness that would never arrive. While cleaning the house, Daniel found a small cloth bag hidden inside a drawer. Inside it were folded papers. They were letters. Letters she had written to him but never sent. My son, today I was very tired, but I thought of you and smiled. My son, the doctor says I should rest, but how can I rest when you are far? My son, if I die before seeing you, know that I waited happily. Daniel pressed the letters to his chest. She loved me even more than I deserved. He whispered. One morning, Daniel walked to his mother's grave. He stood quietly, unable to speak. Finally, he said, Amy, I came back, but too late. The wind moved softly, as if listening. I thought success could wait for you. I was wrong. He placed flowers gently and made a promise not to her ears, but to her memory. I will never forget you. I will tell your story. I will remind others not to make my mistake. Daniel returned abroad, but he was no longer the same man. He called his relatives often. He helped poor mothers in his village. He kept his phone on at all times, not because someone would call, but because he never wanted to ignore love again. Every year, on the day his mother passed away, he returned to the village, sat by the door, and prayed. The house was quiet, but her love was still alive. People say time heals everything, but some wounds do not heal. They teach. A mother waited with patience, a son delayed with hope, and life showed no mercy. Because mothers do not wait forever. Years passed. Daniel's hair slowly turned gray. His success grew, but his heart never felt full. People respected him, praised him, called him accomplished, but inside, he carried a silence no one could hear. Every night, before sleeping, he checked his phone, not because someone would call, but because once, someone had. He often whispered in the dark, Amy, if only I had come earlier. But time does not answer regrets. During one of his visits to the village, Daniel refused to stay anywhere else. He unlocked the old house again. The wooden chair by the door was still there. He sat on it. For the first time, he truly understood. This chair was not furniture. It was hope. It was patience. It was love that refused to give up. He imagined his mother sitting here every evening listening to every sound, lifting her head at every footstep, believing every day could be the day. Tears rolled down his face. "How strong you were," he whispered. One afternoon, a small boy from the village came inside the house. He looked at Daniel curiously. "Uncle," the child asked, "why do you always sit here?" Daniel smiled sadly. "I'm waiting," he said. "For who?" the boy asked. Daniel paused. "For someone who taught me what love is," he replied. The child nodded innocently and said, "My mother waits for me like that when I go to school." Daniel felt his chest tighten. He bent down and said gently, "Then never make her wait too long." Daniel began telling his story not for sympathy, but as a warning. At gatherings, online talks, and small meetings, he said, "I crossed countries, but I failed to cross the distance between my heart and my mother." People listened. Some cried. Some called their mothers that same day, and every time someone said, "I called my mother because of you," Daniel felt a small piece of peace in his old age. Daniel returned to the village one last time. He cleaned the house slowly. He sat by the door. He closed his eyes. For a moment, he felt warmth as if someone was near. "Amy," he whispered, smiling through tears. "I'm home." The wind passed softly through the door, and for the first time in many years, Daniel felt calm. A mother waited with endless patience. A son returned with endless regret. Love was always there. Time was not. After Daniel's final visit to the village, the house was no longer locked forever. He decided something important. The small home where his mother had waited for years would not be left to dust and silence. Daniel repaired the broken walls, fixed the roof, and cleaned every corner with his own hands. But he did not turn it into a modern house. He kept it simple. Just like her. The chair by the door stayed exactly where it was. Daniel named the house the Waiting Mother's Home. It became a small shelter for elderly mothers whose children lived far away or had forgotten them. Not many rooms, not much money, just warmth. Every evening, Daniel made sure someone sat near the door, not to wait in pain, but to be remembered. He would tell the mothers gently, no one should wait alone. And every time he said it, he was speaking to his own heart. Sometimes, late at night, Daniel sat alone on the chair by the door. He spoke softly, as if his mother were listening. "Amy, I couldn't come in time, but I'm trying to become the son you deserved." There was no answer. But inside him, the guilt slowly turned into responsibility. Love delayed had become love shared. Young people from nearby towns began visiting the home. They listened to Daniel's story quietly. Some wiped tears. Some looked down in shame. Some picked up their phones and made calls. Daniel always ended with one sentence: "If your mother is alive, don't honor her after death. Honor her while she can hear your voice." Years later, when Daniel passed away peacefully, the village remembered him, not for his success abroad, but for the lesson he left behind.